So pleased to introduce you to Tom Skore as he is in our virtual green room right now, coming into Author's Corner here on America Tonight with me, Kate Delaney. Boy, he's got a couple of really great books, and they're right in my wheelhouse. You know how I love sci-fi, fantasy, and science fiction wrapped all into it. And so we go to Tom without further ado. Hey, Tom, thanks for popping on.
Oh, it's great to be here.
So let's talk about first, I want to talk about Tranquility Moon, and then we're going to talk about Resurrection Encounter, a science fiction parable for a nuclear age. But let's talk about Tranquility Moon. Tell us what inspired it.
Oh boy, I was reading the book Endurance by Scott Kelly about his year on the space station. And his brother, Mark Kelly, who is now the senator from Arizona, was a space shuttle commander delivering goods to the space station. And they're twin brothers, so the doctors were comparing Scott's year on the space station versus his brother on Earth. And I was reading the chapter where he talks about being on the space station when his sister-in-law, Gabby Giffords, was shot in an assassination attempt and 6 people were killed. That also happened to be Valentine's Day 2018, and 17 kids were killed at Parkland. And I felt so bad about that. And the story came to me. There was another thing too. There was Senator Womack, who is the minister at Martin Luther King's church, was talking about an active shooter incident at his daughter's high school, but he was in DC and how helpless he felt. And I thought, gosh, just think how helpless you'd feel if your kids were involved in a shooting and you were on the space station. And the story began to germinate, and I started thinking about bringing these aliens in, but as the aliens stay in the story, violence is contagious, and they said we consider this more of an inoculation than anything else, but I kept them on the backside of the moon to keep them away from Earth in the story.
Right.
But that was basically where the idea began to form in my head. And I sat down and I started writing it.
And we're not going to tell everyone everything about the book, but give us a little bit of the story.
Well, it's kind of a modern day allegory, and it operates, I think, on 3 levels. The first one is that you've got a family who experiences a shooting at the son's high school, and it's how they respond to this violent incident. It's very personal, and I think that there's a 10-year-old girl and a 16-year-old son, and I think that's where a lot of families would relate. It's kind of an everyman story in that sense. And then you've got the next level, which is taking place on the space station, which is kind of an objective.
And of course, we're talking to Tom Skore about his books. Tranquility Moon is the focus right now that we're talking about, and some of the themes and what you can expect when you pick up Tranquility Moon. And I like the way you set that up for us, Tom, where you were talking about, can you imagine being so far away and then this shooting happens and you're nowhere near it because you're thousands and thousands of miles away doing something completely different. There is some correlate or parallels, I think, to it is probably a better way to say that. And you were talking about that. You were talking about some of the themes that you thought were certainly in the book that people would be able to understand and would grasp that. Because I asked, we're not going to tell them everything, but we tell them just a little bit. Tell us just a tiny bit more about the book.
I was going to say that I was watching a program once about the grizzly bears in Kamchatka on the Russian peninsula, and I guess I remember once having a grizzly bear in my backyard in Alaska, and one of the things that I took away from that, the research they was doing, that fear is a sign of aggression. They were working with bears who had not been socialized, had not seen people. And I think that the astronaut on the space station in Tranquility Moon is having great
at first having great difficulty knowing whether he should trust an alien that seems to be fairly benign, or does he really have, or should he trust the people down on Earth that are telling him that he shouldn't have any conversation with this alien? And I think he finally figures out that the real antagonist is not any one person or individual it's fear. It's strictly fear. And fear causes people to go and get guns. And even there's the young child, he talks to the young child at one point, and she talks about, well, if they're trying to eliminate the violence, if they're doing this kind of thing, it's going to cause people to want to go and buy guns, and it's going to make society more violent. I mean, and that is a reoccurring theme, I think, in the world today. I kind of wanted to create a situation in which the reader is kind of straitjacketed. I didn't want to have to explain what the alien was doing or why they were doing it, but there was an element of acceptance in the story, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. It makes me think too. That's obviously one of the takeaways. But when people read this book, which you can get it on Amazon for a song, whatever version you want, Kindle, paperback, get it. It's really, really good. Violence would be one thing, violence on Earth. Maybe taking responsibility, that would be one thing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Responsibility for a lot of things. You can ignore it. You can try to ignore climate change, but the fact of the matter is, even if climate change is a natural thing to some extent, you don't want to add to it. So you have to take responsibility. I think there's another level to the story too, and that is it's a mirror of society. It represents who we are now. And I think the alien represents who we could be, because they are very, very advanced. The alien talks about how we used to have AI, but we eventually merged with it. And I think there's a real problem for us. There was a wonderful article years ago in the Chronicle of Higher Education by a theorist named Northrop Frye. And he talked about the parallel tracks of the arts and sciences. And when we talk about AI, I wonder what our guiding light is. I don't think we have one. I sometimes imagine people, when they think of AI, think of data on the last generation, or and is that our viewpoint? We are, in essence, creating a sentient being, and yet right now it's a free-for-all. So it seems to me that the book represents us as we are now, but it also represents who we could be in the future, who we could be 1,000 years from now. We could be the aliens. We could be trying to help another civilization. I wish that we were helping more countries in the world overcome their lack of money, of housing, of food. We can be those people if we could just get ourselves together and work as a team rather than fighting each other all the time.
Yeah, so well said, so well said. So then we move from that and the takeaways there to Resurrection Encounter, a scientific fiction parable for a nuclear age. Tell us about this, because this is interesting too, where you're talking about restocking, even alien explorers in orbit, what they're seeing, this new chartered planet. I can't even wrap my brain around that. That's how exciting and scary actually it is. So tell us about it.
Well, I'd say, you kind of come up with a premise. I had an encounter with someone that I felt had kind of they were strongly Christian, but they were coming down really heavy on another country. Let's just say that. And I thought it would be an interesting idea to write a story where Jesus Christ, not a second coming, but the Jesus Christ that we know that was crucified, was brought to the 21st century. and I use some things, some facts like relativity to go ahead and do that. So you I think in both cases you start with a premise. There's an acting technique that talks, it's improvisational, but it always has an element of truth to it. And the element of truth with Resurrection Encounter is about hypocrisy, versus the element of truth that we're looking at with Tranquility Moon is violence. But it's kind of fun. You come up with a premise, and then you start to write the story, and the characters start talking to themselves, and all of a sudden you have Jesus talking about what he's learning about modern society, about the violence in modern society, and talking about what he intended versus how it's been taken, how the people have taken their religion and what he said and conformed it to what they want, rather than taking what he said and conforming their actions to what he intended. And the interesting thing is what happens in the book. The book really starts out between the aliens and getting to know Jesus, although he doesn't know they're aliens when it's happening. But at the same time, in the story, there is a nuclear device that is set off in Beirut. And then a few days later, Jerusalem is threatened with the same kind of fate.
We continue our conversation with Tom Skore on the flip side here on America Tonight. Next.